Alright everybody, today we are looking at two cameras around the same price, but they bring completely different strengths to the table. I got the Fujifilm X-S20 versus the Sony A6700. Everybody, stop focusing on my face. We got these two bad boys in the house. One is all about those stunning colors and creative vibe, while the other offers autofocus so reliable, it feels like it's cheating. But here's the real question though. What's more important to you? Never missing a shot of fast action or having photos that look like they've been edited right out of the camera? And stick around until the end where I share with you guys my personal pick, and it's not as straightforward as you might think. Let's go. Both cameras are compact, lightweight, and very travel-friendly. The Fujifilm has a slightly deeper grip, which makes it a little bit more comfortable for longer shoots. The Sony A67 also has a decent grip, but it feels slightly more cramped, especially if you have larger hands. So this is why I recommend you guys, when you guys get the Sony A6700, to get yourself like a small rig hand grip that you guys can use. It just extends the camera a little bit, and then it just makes it a little bit more comfortable to hold. Both cameras have one SD card slot. That's fine for most users, but if you're doing professional work, dual card slots would have been nice. They both have micro HDMI ports, and if you're wondering why I'm bringing this up, it's because micro HDMI is kind of annoying, it's kind of fragile, and if you're doing any kind of external recording, just be careful and be prepared to handle it with care. The Sony A6700 has a rangefinder style EVF, so it's off to the side, whereas the Fujifilm X-S20 places the EVF in the center. And I'll be honest here, the Sony A6700's EVF isn't that great. It's small, it's dim, and overall it's just very annoying to use. The Fuji's EVF isn't perfect either, but it's noticeably better, just slightly. The Fujifilm X-S20 also has a pop-up flash, and I know, pop-up flashes are considered, to me anyways, kind of useless, but there are certain niche situations out there where the pop-up flash may come in handy, and the Sony A6700 doesn't have one. Look how cool is that? Pop it up again. Boom. Isn't that a neat party trick? The Sony A6700 has 3 custom settings you can program. It's great for quickly switching between presets and, settings that you may have. Fujifilm takes it up a notch with 4 custom settings. So for build and handling, it really depends on who you are. I really enjoy the Fujifilm's X-S20's grip. However, I do like the material on the Sony A6700. It just feels a little bit more premium in my hands than the Fujifilm X-S20's plasticky build. I'm sorry, it does feel plasticky and kind of hollow, but saying that, I do prefer holding the Fujifilm X-S20 a lot better than the Sony A6700. And the EVF placement on the side thing, I much prefer the one in the center. So let's talk about what these cameras are capable of in the photography department. Both of these cameras have a 26 megapixel sensor, so you're getting plenty of resolutions for most use cases. But the experience of using these sensors is where things start to differ. The Fujifilm X-S20's Fuji colors are legendary for a reason. Straight out of the camera, you get those beautiful, beautiful colors, beautiful tones that makes people fall in love with photography. It's almost film-like, cinematic, and editing on a Fuji RAW file, it's really a breeze. The Sony A6700 colors are fine. They're accurate, which can be great if you're shooting for brands, clients, but they do lack that character of Fuji's colors. And the editing on a Sony RAW file just takes more effort. You really do need to massage it to get it the way you want it to look. I know I certainly have problems editing on Sony RAW files. I do spend a little more time on Sony RAW files than I would like. If I take a shot with my Fujifilm, I know that it's probably going to take me 5 minutes to edit a RAW file. With the Sony RAW files, I can take anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes just to get the colors looking great in my eyes. I think I'm a good editor. I think I can edit certain things, but then a slight little micro adjustment is what you need to really make your Sony RAW files look good, and that's something that I'm not good at just yet. I also like to add that Fuji does have a huge community dedicated to creating film recipes. Sites like Fujifilm X Weekly are filled with different types of looks that makes your straight out of camera JPEGs look incredible with 0 efforts. All you need to do is just dial in some settings on your Fujifilm camera. Sony they don't have that kind of community support. You can tweak your settings to create custom looks, but that is a solo effort. And if you're a beginner, this might take a lot of time. So this is something that you have to do on your own, or go on to like, you know, forums or even Reddits to scour the internet for these kind of things. Skin tones on the XS20, in my opinion, just looks a lot better. They're a little bit, they're warmer, they're more flattering, and it's just easier to work with. The Sony A6700 has improved skin tones compared to older Sony cameras. So I used to own the Sony A7 II for like a month or two. What happened was my Fujifilm X-T2 died because of heavy pouring rain. So what happened after was I went to a camera shop in Bali, and then they had this special deal on a full frame camera. And I was like, you know what? I think this is the right opportunity to try it. I bought the Sony A7 II, took it on a day trip in Bali. Did not like the colors, did not know how to edit the colors. The skin tones looked nasty. I went back to the camera shop. They said that there's no return policy. So what I ended up doing was buying another X-T2 in that moment, so I can start taking pictures, because I was so accustomed to the Fuji looks. So on this Bali trip, I had a broken X-T2, I had a full frame camera that I bought, and then I also bought another Fujifilm X-T2. So I wasted like a couple of grand in that 1 or 2 days just so I can get like good colors. So the Sony A6700 has improved skin tones from that camera, the Sony A7 II, but Fuji still takes the win here. Skin tones just look so good, and it's something that I do value as a portrait photographer. When it comes to sharpness, Sony delivers sharper, more clinical photos. If you like that, you know, that crispy, detailed look, you'll appreciate what the Sony A6700 brings to the table. Fuji images does have like a more softer, more like, you know, film-like quality. It's not a lack of detail, it's just a different aesthetic. So it just depends on who you are. It depends on what you value. If you love vibrant, stylized images and minimal editing, go Fuji. If you prefer sharpness and true-to-life colors, go Sony. So both cameras are excellent tools for video creators, but they take different approaches. Fujifilm X-S20 shoots 6.2K open gate video. Open gate is great for cropping, reframing. It has 4K 60 with no crop. It shoots in log f-log2, which is a base ISO of 1000, so you can get the most dynamic range possible in on your sensor. The Sony A6700 shoots 4K 120 with a 1.5 times crop. It shoots 4K 60 with no crop, and it also has dual native ISO. The first base ISO is at 800 and the next is at 2500, which cleans up noise beautifully in low light. When it comes to low light performance here, and for video, Sony wins, no contest. That dual native ISO does make a noticeable difference when you're shooting in dim conditions. Sony offers S-Cinetone, which gives you a more polished cinematic look without needing to touch the footage in post, and Fuji also offers something similar, which is their Eterna film simulation. This is also excellent. It mimics the classic Hollywood film stock it's named after. If overheating is a deal breaker, you're just better off getting cameras like the Sony FX30 or the Fujifilm X-H2S. Now let's move on to autofocus. This one is straightforward. Sony's autofocus is just leagues ahead of Fuji's. Like, it's crazy. The Sony A6700 has an AI processor, XR Bion's chip, which makes subject tracking a breeze. Whether you're shooting fast-moving kids, pets, or sports, it's fucking incredible. The Fujifilm's autofocus is stagnated. Like, it's not improved at all. It's not in the same league. So if you need reliable tracking, Sony is the way to go. Enter autofocusing test. Alrighty folks, here's the deal. I'm going to leave this Fujifilm X-S20 footage running full screen for you to analyze the autofocusing yourself. Watch closely and see how it performs in this type of scenario. And while you're doing that, let's just talk about what I found during my autofocusing test. Start with the Sony. I shot with both cameras side by side to keep things as even as possible. For the Sony, I use mid-burst mode, not high or high plus, just mid-burst. And for the Fujifilm X-S20, I stuck with 5 frames per second, which is where I usually stay when shooting photos. Fair game, right? Both cameras were using the Tamron 17-70 f2.8. It's a solid, relatively new lens with good autofocusing motors, so it felt like a fair choice for testing. Now, I know some of you fanboys might argue, oh, but you need to use native glass for a proper comparison. To that, I say, nah. The point here is to have a fair matchup using the same lens, and it's not like the Sony is getting special treatment with native glass either. This is all about testing what these systems can really do when it comes to autofocus. That's the point. So let's start with the first test. So the first test, I told the wife to walk in a zigzag pattern. I wanted to see how the camera can track. And for the second test, it was a straight line, fairly easy. Sony A6700 walking in a zigzag, I tallied it up, and in this scenario, the A6700 with the Tamron 17-70mm f2.8, it only had 5 missed focus shots out of 42 shots. That means there was 37 out of 42 shots were in focus, making this an 88% hit rate for the Sony. Now let's move on to the Fujifilm. For the Fujifilm X-S20, I tallied it up, and the Fuji missed only 13 shots. How many did it fire off? It fired off about 34 shots. For the zigzag autofocusing tracking on the Fujifilm X-S20 with the same lens, the Tamron 17-70, you have 21 out of 34 shots in focus, resulting in a 61.7% hit rate. What do you guys think? Is this respectable? Now let's go on to the straight line test. For the Sony, walking in a straight path, the Sony missed only 3 shots. 3 shots out of 31. That means that 28 out of 31 shots were in focus, resulting in a 90% hit rate. And for the Fujifilm X-S20, I tallied it up, and the Fujifilm X-S20 missed about 11 shots out of 27. 16 out of 27 shots were in focus, resulting in a 59.2% hit rate. And just as I suspected, Fuji never really put up a fight.
Stop! He's already dead!
I've used both cameras extensively for portrait photography, travel, and content creation. The Fujifilm X-S20 for me, it's a fun little camera. The film simulations are nice, making it feel really a creative tool, and the colors are just like so unbeatable. I also love the 6.2K open gate recording for my YouTube content. I've been filming a couple of videos on this camera, and I do enjoy how my footage looked despite there being a little bit of noise and despite it being looking a little bit softer than the Sony's. That said, Fuji's autofocus struggles can be really frustrating, especially when I'm shooting anything fast-paced. And that's where the Sony A6700 comes in. It's reliable, the autofocus locks on every time, the video footage is clean, Sony's lens ecosystem is unmatched. It is a workhorse that can get the job done without any drama. If you're still on the fence, here's a little quick breakdown. The Sony A6700, best for action, better in low light, great, reliable autofocusing. It's great for video creators who need crisp, clean footage. The Fujifilm X-S20, best for creative photographers who love colors, who love storytelling, and it's great for hybrid shooters. I spent years shooting on Fujifilm cameras, and they always have a special place in my heart. The X-S20 with its stunning colors, film simulations, great hand grip, it does everything that I want it to do photography-wise. Let's not sugarcoat things. Fujifilm can be downright frustrating. Their autofocus, trash. Let's call it what it is. It's like relying on that one friend who always shows up late to dinner. Like, you love them, but you wouldn't trust them with anything urgent. Like, if you're trying to photograph fast-moving kids, pets, or anything that doesn't, politely stand still, Fujifilm is not the buddy you can count on. And that's where the Sony steps in. It's all business, no nonsense. The Sony A6700 locks onto your subjects and holds onto it for dear life. It's reliable, it's consistent, it gives you that peace of mind every time you hit that shutter. misfocus shots are almost a non-issue on this camera. Now, I know some folks out there are clinging on to the hope of firmware updates, like, oh, just wait for firmware updates. Hold on, like Fuji's gonna come with a firmware update and it's gonna fix everything. Listen, I really think that's a dangerous game to play here. Don't ever buy a camera for what it might become. Buy it for what it is right now. If it improves later, that's a bonus. But banking on a promise is a recipe for frustration. Let's be real for a moment right now. Fujifilm's track record on these updates isn't great. Remember when we waited 8 months for them to fix the autofocusing on the XH2S and the XH2? Yeah, they just literally just came out with a firmware like a couple of weeks ago, but it took them 8 months. We were complaining in April or March, and they just came out with it a couple of weeks ago in November. It's ridiculous how long we have to wait for them to fix the issue. It just feels like they slapped a band-aid over this, and it doesn't feel like a true fix. So like I saw a lot of videos, and yeah, like it's still not operating to, you know, 2024 standard. So do yourself a favor. Buy a camera based on what it can do for you today, not on what it might do for you tomorrow. Here's the question: which one would I choose if I were to pick just one? Now, if you ask me which one I choose, honestly, it just depends. My heart screams Fujifilm X-S20 because I know that system inside out. I've learned how to work around its quirks, and I can still capture great photos despite its shortcomings. But if I were to put on my first-time camera buyer hat, someone that's just starting out, eager to grow into their gear, and looking to get the most value, get the most bang for their buck, I'd have to recommend the Sony A6700. It's safe, it's reliable, and the tech in that camera is miles ahead of what Fujifilm is offering. And Sony colors on this camera, although it's a little bit of a struggle for me still, I'm enjoying it. I'm actually getting better at editing it. So if I can get better at editing it, so can you guys, okay? So here's my advice. Know yourself, know what you value most, and pick the camera that aligns with your needs and shooting style. At the end of the day, both cameras have their strengths and weaknesses. It's not about finding the perfect camera, it's about finding the one that works for you. Whether you pick a Fuji or a Sony, the most important thing is that you're out there capturing moments and making them your own. So there you have it, folks. Which one are you leaning on? Let me know which one you would pick, the Sony A6700 or the Fujifilm X-S20. Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this video helpful, consider subscribing for more content like this. And thanks so much.